Hey everyone, Andy Raffel from eTeknix.com, and today we're actually going to do a little bit of a case review on this, the new Corsair iCUE 465X RGB. Let's take a look. So the 465X RGB is actually, as the name suggests, the direct replacement for the 460X, which was actually a very popular case. Now, being kind of branded as iCUE and RGB automatically tells us that, I guess a little bit like the 220T, it's actually going to be a smart case, if you will. So when you saw the 220T that came out, it actually had what they called the Lighting Node Core, a little bit similar to the Lighting Node Pro, but maybe not with as many features. So with the Lighting Node Core, you can only sort of connect up to 6 RGB fans. You can't hook up LED strips, whereas the Node Pro, you can do up to 12 strips or fans. So a little bit of a difference there. Now, the case itself comes in black or white, and we've actually got the white edition here. So I'm actually quite a big advocate of white cases, so really kind of looking forward to this to sort of see what it looks like and what kind of functionality it offers. Now, luckily, because it is Corsair, they have gone with the kind of foam as opposed to polystyrene, so I know I can touch the case and not get a static shock. So let's take it out of here and have a look at what the case is all about. So as I mentioned, it comes in black or white. We've got the white edition. Now, pricing wise, this is actually going to be pretty surprising. So in the UK, it's going to come in at about £114.99 RRP. In Europe, €124.90, and in America, $149.99 plus taxes and shipping. So let's take a little look around the case and kind of see, I guess, what it's all about and what it kind of gives us above the 460X and what kind of, these smart functions actually are. So first impressions, obviously it is a mid-tower, and I do like the fact that even though it is a white chassis, it does have some contrasting features. So with the front, we do have 4mm tempered glass, and it has kind of this black strip at the top as well as at the bottom, just with quite a subtle Corsair logo. Now, talking about the front, as I mentioned, 4mm tempered glass, and this is actually removable through these thumb screws. And behind it is kind of a dust filter, which is removable as you'd expect, so you can clean everything. And there's quite a lot of ventilation, sort of just down the side of the chassis. So anyone fearing that, the fact that it has tempered glass on there, it isn't going to have sort of, the right ventilation, you've got plenty on both sides. Now, behind that dust filter, there is 3 installed fans. These are the LL120 fans, and in the front, there is actually support for sort of the 3 fans, or you could go with 2 140mm fans. Yes, there is support for radiators as well, so you could actually fit a whopping 360mm inside this with the fans as well. And I will show you kind of the inside of it, so you can kind of see what's going on there. Now, the other things that I kind of really like is on the top. So there is this kind of removable dust filter. It is magnetic, so we can remove that and it will give us kind of an indication as to what we can do sort of fan-wise on here. So again, we can fit some 120mm or a single 140. So one 140mm or 2 120s, or of course you could fit like an AIO or a radiator. So there's actually quite a lot of radiator support for a chassis of this size and kind of this price point. Now, when we also look on the top, if I can just sort of tilt it this way, you can see that we've got our kind of front I/O. There's 2 USB 3.0 ports, a microphone, headphone, and also a reset button and a power button. Sadly, there isn't any USB Type-C on here, which I would have liked to have seen. But again, for the price point, I guess you can't really sort of moan and grumble too much about it. Now, on this side, nothing really to sort of talk and write home about. It's just a clear panel, and we will look at kind of clearance and stuff on the inside as well. And then on the rear, again, nothing really too out of the ordinary. Space for kind of, an extra fan on the back, so 120mm. Space for your kind of rear I/O panel, 7 expansion slots, as well as these vertical ones over here as well. And then obviously power supply down the bottom. Now, if we turn this over again and look at the actual bottom, you can see that we do have kind of 4 pretty solid looking feet with slight rubber on there to obviously give us dampening sound properties, and they do have this kind of chromed finish to it. In terms of kind of dust filters down here, there is a single one for the power supply, which can simply be removed and washed off, and it's a lot finer than the kind of mesh that's on the front and the top of the case. So that's pretty much it really for the outside. Obviously, again, 4mm tempered glass on this side, and the thing I do like about it is slightly smoked, and it does have kind of this black beveled edge to it as well. So yeah, you can basically remove your thumb screws and have a look inside. So let's jump in and take a look. So inside, again, very similar to kind of the 460X that we've seen before. There is kind of this large PSU shroud and a few things that I've kind of, I don't know, expected from chassis manufacturers in this day and age. So rubber grommets on sort of the holes for passing through your cables. And the fact that they have one down here specifically for your GPU. Now, the whole of the inside is white. I maybe would have liked to have seen maybe a little bit more contrast. But as I say, if you are after a black one, then it does come in that color as well. We do have a very large kind of motherboard cutout here, so you can still get to the back of your motherboard if you want to change your CPU cooler at a later date and don't want to take everything outside of the case. Now, in terms of kind of EPS connector, it is a little bit restricted over here. There is quite a small panel, but still enough that you should be able to kind of get your cables through. So your 8-pin EPS or the 8+4 that I guess higher end motherboards would have. You will notice that with these two grommets here, they are kind of ever so slightly kind of bent out of shape, but in a good way. It's probably not the right terminology that I should be using, but it's so that it's kind of facing kind of diagonal, I guess, is how you'd actually word it. So the good thing with that is it means that you're kind of able to get like your 24 pin in into your motherboard without too many problems, because obviously when you are looking at a mid-towered case, you are going to have maybe slight issues with motherboard clearance because the motherboard's going to come off, kind of cut off just before them grommets. So at the bottom I did mention that there is this PSU shroud. There is actually quite a lot of ventilation there for your power supply, even though we have got the dust filter on the bottom, so the power supply fan should be facing below, but it actually does sort of assist with a little bit of ventilation anyway. We do have the vertical GPU mount up here as well, so you could position your GPU in there, and as you can see there's quite a lot of clearance for a GPU. I mean, so much clearance in fact that you have kind of the amount of room for GPUs up to 370mm, which will cover pretty much any GPU from both AMD and Nvidia. Talking about other clearances, we've got the CPU cooler clearance, which comes in at 170mm. So again, you're going to be able to fit some of the largest coolers out there on the market. So even though it doesn't really look that wide, there's still quite a lot of space to it. I'm going to take off the other side panel just so we can sort of look at clearance and stuff on that side, and then talk about sort of some of the other features, I guess, of the smart functionality behind the chassis. So as I mentioned before, there is actually quite a lot of room for kind of liquid cooling. So we have got the room for a 360mm rad in the front. You're probably going to be restricted to the thickness, maybe 28 to 30mm. Anything more than that, you are going to struggle with kind of the shroud here, because we have actually got the hard drive cages just below this part of the shroud. There is room up here for two SSDs, so they can be mounted quite easily on the front there. So if you are using something maybe like one of the RGB SSDs from the likes of Team Group, that's going to look really nice kind of shining outside of the tempered glass. Other than that, it does accept obviously ATX form factor, micro ATX and mini ATX, and most of the standoffs are pre-installed. And one of the things that I really do love is the middle standoff is actually one of the ones that you can kind of notch on the motherboard and it will stay in place, which is really nice to see. As I say, other kind of liquid cooling support is at the top, and you could even get away with actually having a 120mm fan with a 120mm rad or AIO on the rear if you decided to go down that route. Obviously you could install more fans in here, so the 2 at the top and the 1 at the back, and of course we have got the 7 expansion slots, and I do like the kind of black, white, monochrome kind of look that they've gone with on there. Now turning the case around, we can see that there's plenty of room for more storage options. So we do have another two 2.5-inch drive bays here for your SSDs, but obviously I do know in this day and age a lot of people are using M.2, so whether you're going to need 4 in total I don't know, but otherwise this space would just kind of, I guess, not really get used, so it makes sense to kind of put these on there just in case there was someone who wanted that functionality. In terms of 3.5-inch, down the bottom we have our simple kind of pull-out trays for 3.5-inch drive bays, and there are 2 of them in total. Obviously with the price of hard drives coming down quite dramatically over the years, you will find obviously it's a lot cheaper to buy kind of a larger drive than multiple smaller drives. So yeah, so there's that. That can, if I look and turn it this way, can actually be removed completely. So we have got 4 screws here, which means that we can actually take the whole hard drive cage out, which is especially handy if you're doing things like liquid cooling and you wanted to put perhaps the pump down there and then maybe have the reservoir on the other side, just to kind of neaten things up a little bit and kind of free up a little bit of space. Now obviously there's quite a few cables and connectors that are on here, and most of them are actually going into the Node Core. So as I mentioned earlier, slightly differently to the Node Pro and the Commander Pro, you can fit 6 fans in here, and of course it does have to go in order. So the 3 fans that are already kind of pre-installed are already kind of positioned in there, so that if you're doing some of the lighting effects using the iCUE software, you're going to be able to kind of go 1, 2, 3, or swap it around so that if maybe, for instance, you're starting at the bottom, it'll kind of ring round here into the next one, into the next one, then it might go to the top, which would be number 4, number 5, and then the rear fan would be number 6. So yeah, obviously we saw this functionality on the 220T case, and it kind of makes sense being able to offer smart functionality on an affordable budget, and priced at £115, $150 in the US. It is an affordable case in the grand scheme of things for what you're kind of getting on offer. Now for those worrying about kind of cable management, so as I mentioned, you could take the hard drive cage out if you're not using it, which will free up quite a lot of room for cable management. If you're not using that radiator in the front, you do have quite a lot of room tucked away here. But in terms of the power supply, you do have quite a decent amount of room here. I mean, when you actually look at the power supply kind of spacing, you do actually have room for support up to 180mm long power supplies. So even with kind of all your cables, you will be able to tuck them away here. There isn't a huge amount of room between kind of where the, I guess, the edge of the chassis is, but there's still going to be enough to kind of route your cables for your EPS down here and hide a lot of it away. And obviously you have got these cable routing grommets as well, just to kind of, you know, neaten things up a little bit. So there are a lot of cable kind of loops on here as well, so as we can see they've already kind of looped some of them in, but I do advise getting kind of Velcro cable ties, your normal kind of windy cable ties, and just really trying to find somewhere that can tidy things up you know, much neater through a variety of different means. So there is that aspect of it. So the only other thing that I really wanted to mention was build quality. Obviously it is Corsair, so you don't really expect anything less from them. It is pretty damn fantastic build quality, even when it comes down to being a white chassis. Generally white chassis do have problems with kind of the paint flaking, but I can just sort of feel around the case, it does feel very, very solid, very good kind of paint quality, very, very good build quality. Now a lot of people, especially in America, because it does sound, I guess, more expensive than an affordable chassis should be, $150 plus taxes and shipping. But you do have to remember that you are getting the lighting Node Core, as well as the 3 fans in there as well. I mean, if you go on Amazon and look at sort of the price of 3 LL fans, deduct that from that, that will kind of give you an indication as to how much you're actually paying for the case. And you've got to remember, 4mm tempered glass on the side, 4mm tempered glass on the front, quite a lot of functionality overall for a mid-tower, and it doesn't really take up that much room in the grand scheme of things. So we have actually got a time lapse of this as well, where we will kind of obviously be showing exactly how it looks when it's completed, and we will link to that in the description below, so definitely go and check that one out. And let me know in the comments section below, did you originally buy a 460X? Is there enough going on with the 465X that would kind of give you the urge to upgrade? Or if you didn't buy a 460X, is this maybe going to be your next chassis? Let me know, and other than that, hopefully you enjoyed the video, you know exactly what to do, and I will see you in the next one. And let me know if you actually like this type of video, because it'd be very interesting to get your feedback. See you later, guys. Cheers. Bye-bye.